The text came at 11:47 p.m. on a Thursday, right when Celeste thought I was asleep. The blue glow from her phone lit up our bedroom like a cheap motel sign, and I watched through half-closed eyes as she typed furiously with both thumbs. "I'm blocking you this weekend for girls' night. Don't call me." She was texting someone, but it sure as hell wasn't her girlfriends. I'd been married to Celeste Garrison for 8 years, and I knew her tells better than a poker shark knows a nervous amateur. The way she hunched over that phone, shielding it like state secrets. The little smile that crept across her face when she read the responses. The way she'd started showering twice a day and buying lingerie that never made it to our bedroom. Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible Reddit stories. My name's Eddie Garrison, and I fix things for a living. I run a small handyman business here in Millbrook, Maine. Population 23,000 and shrinking. It's the kind of post-industrial town where the textile mills closed 20 years ago, leaving behind converted loft apartments for tech workers who commute to Portland. I'm good with my hands, good at solving problems, and apparently good at being invisible to my own wife. "Who's that?" I asked, my voice thick with fake sleep. Celeste jumped like I'd fired a gun. "Just Tiffany, planning girls' weekend." Tiffany Walsh was Celeste's best friend since college, a real estate agent with bleached teeth and an Instagram addiction. She documented every meal, every outfit, every thought that flitted through her head. If Celeste was really planning something with Tiffany, half the town would already know about it. "Where you going?" I pressed. "Probably Portland. Hit some bars, maybe catch a show." She was still hunched over that phone, typing. "You know how it is." I knew how it was, all right. I knew my wife worked as an HR director at TechFlow Solutions, a startup that moved into the old Millbrook textile building downtown. I knew she'd been working late 3 nights a week for the past 2 months. I knew she'd started caring about her appearance again, buying new clothes and getting her nails done every week. What I didn't know was who B was and why he was sending her messages at midnight. But I was about to find out. Celeste fell asleep around 1 a.m., phone clutched in her hand like a security blanket. I waited another hour, listening to her breathing, watching the rise and fall of her shoulders in the dim light from our alarm clock. When I was sure she was deep under, I slipped out of bed and padded downstairs to my workshop in the basement. I keep my real tools down there, not just hammers and screwdrivers, but the electronic stuff I've picked up over the years. Signal detectors, lockpicks, a decent computer setup. You learn things when you spend your days in other people's houses, fixing their problems and listening to their secrets. You learn that everyone has something to hide, and you learn how to find it when you need to. The next morning, Celeste was up early, bustling around the kitchen with nervous energy. She'd packed a small overnight bag, too small for a weekend trip, too nice for camping. Designer jeans, silk blouses, the black dress I'd bought her for our anniversary last year. "When are you leaving?" I asked, pouring coffee from the pot she'd already made. "Around 6. Tiffany's picking me up." She wouldn't meet my eyes. "We'll probably stay overnight in Portland, maybe hit the old port." I nodded like a trusting husband. "Have fun. I'll probably work on the Morrison job this weekend." The Morrison job was a kitchen renovation on the other side of town, good cover for being out of the house if I needed it. Celeste kissed me goodbye at 5:30, a quick peck on the cheek that felt like a business transaction. I watched from our front window as she walked down Maple Street with her overnight bag, turning left toward downtown instead of right toward Tiffany's house on Oak Street. That's when I knew for sure. I gave her 10 minutes, then walked out to my truck. Millbrook isn't big enough to lose someone if you know where to look, and I had a pretty good idea where Celeste was heading. TechFlow Solutions was in the converted textile building, but the residential lofts were on the upper floors. Expensive units with river views, the kind of place where a sales executive might live if he wanted to impress people. I parked across from the building and waited. At 6:15, a white Tesla Model S pulled up to the front entrance. The driver got out, mid-30s, tall, wearing a polo shirt that probably cost more than I made in a week. He had that startup look, expensive haircut, perfect teeth, the kind of confident swagger that comes from never having to fix anything with your own hands. Celeste appeared in the lobby and walked out to meet him. Even from across the street, I could see the way she moved, hip swaying, head tilted just so, the way she used to walk for me, back when we were dating. The man, B, I assumed, opened the passenger door for her like a gentleman. They kissed before she got in, not a friendly peck, but a real kiss, the kind that says, "I've been waiting all day for this." I started my truck and followed them out of downtown, staying back 3 car lengths. They drove north on Route 1, past the turnoff to Portland, past the signs for tourist attractions and seafood restaurants. After 20 minutes, they turned into the driveway of a modern glass house overlooking the Penobscot River. I parked on the shoulder and watched through binoculars as they went inside. Through the floor-to-ceiling windows, I could see them moving around what looked like a kitchen. He poured wine. She laughed at something he said, throwing her head back the way she used to laugh at my jokes. I drove home and sat in my workshop until 2 a.m., planning. Saturday morning, I was up at dawn. Celeste's side of the bed was still empty, sheets cold and undisturbed. I made coffee and sat at our kitchen table, looking out at the Victorian house we'd bought 3 years ago. It needed work. The porch sagged, the paint was peeling, and the heating system belonged in a museum. But it was ours, or at least it was mine. The deed was in my name, bought with money I'd saved from 10 years of fixing other people's problems. I called Mick O'Brien at 8 a.m. Mick used to tend bar at the Anchor downtown before he started his own locksmith business. He's the kind of friend who'll help you move a body without asking questions, though in this case I just needed him to help me move some furniture. "Eddie, what's got you up so early on a Saturday?" "Need a favor, Mick. Can you swing by the house around noon? Bring your tools." "What kind of tools we talking about?" "The kind that changes locks." There was a pause. "Celeste locked you out of your own house?" "Other way around." Another pause, longer this time. "I'll be there in an hour." Mick showed up at 9 a.m. in his battered Ford pickup, toolbox rattling in the back. He's built like a fire hydrant, short, broad, with arms like tree trunks and a face that's seen the wrong end of too many bar fights. He took one look at me and shook his head. "She's cheating." "Yep." "You got proof?" "Saw them together last night. Some tech bro with a Tesla and a glass house." Mick spat into the bushes. "Fucking tech bros. What's the plan?" I handed him a cup of coffee and laid it out. We'd change all the locks, front door, back door, basement, even the garage. I'd already called a storage company. They were sending a truck at 1 p.m. to pick up Celeste's belongings. Not everything, just the expensive stuff. The designer clothes, the jewelry, the collection of self-help books she never read. "What about her car?" Mick asked. "It's in her name, I'm not touching it." "Smart. Keep this legal." He drained his coffee and stood up. "Let's get to work." We started with the front door, a solid oak piece with a deadbolt and a handle lock. Mick worked fast, his thick fingers surprisingly delicate with the small screws and springs. I packed Celeste's clothes into boxes, trying not to think about the black lingerie said I'd never seen her wear. The storage truck arrived right on schedule. 2 guys in blue uniforms who didn't ask questions, just loaded boxes and furniture like they'd done this 1,000 times before. Probably had. By 4 p.m., we were done. New locks, empty closets, and a letter I'd written that morning sitting on the kitchen counter where Celeste couldn't miss it. "Trip's canceled. So is our marriage. Your belongings are in storage unit 247 on Industrial Road. The key is with the manager. Don't come back." Mick read it over my shoulder. Short and sweet. I'm not much for long speeches. We went out to the front porch to wait. Mrs. O'Hara from next door was watering her flowers, but I could tell she was watching us. Margaret O'Hara was 75 years old and knew everything that happened on Maple Street within 10 minutes of it happening. She'd been widowed for 20 years and treated neighborhood drama like her personal soap opera. "Afternoon, Mrs. O'Hara," I called out. "Afternoon, Eddie. Doing some work on the house?" Something like that. She nodded knowingly. "Celeste's car hasn't been in the driveway much lately." "No, it hasn't. Shame when marriages go bad. But sometimes it's for the best." I was starting to like Mrs. O'Hara more and more. Celeste's Honda pulled into the driveway at 6:30 p.m., right on schedule. I watched from the living room window as she got out, overnight bag in hand, looking relaxed and satisfied. She had that post-sex glow that I remembered from our honeymoon, back when I was the one putting it there. She tried her key in the front door. It didn't work. She tried it again, jiggling it the way you do when you think the lock is just being stubborn. Still nothing. That's when she started pounding on the door. Eddie, open up. My key's not working." I sat in my recliner and picked up a book. Stephen King's Needful Things seemed appropriate. "Eddie, what the hell is going on?" More pounding. I could hear Mrs. O'Hara's screen door open, then footsteps on her porch. The show was about to begin. Celeste walked around to the back door, tried her key there. Same result. She came back to the front, and I could hear her on the phone. "Tiffany? Yeah, it's me. Something's wrong with the locks. No, I don't know what happened. Can you come over?" I opened the front window just wide enough to speak through. "Celeste." She spun around, relief flooding her face. "Eddie, thank God. The locks are broken or something. I can't get in." "They're not broken. They're changed." The relief died. "What?" "Check the kitchen counter. There's a letter." "I can't check the kitchen counter because I can't get in the fucking house." Mrs. O'Hara made a disapproving noise. Celeste had always been careful about her language in public. "Trip's canceled," I said through the window. "So is our marriage. Your stuff's in storage." "You can't do this. This is my house too." "Actually, it's not. Check the deed." That stopped her cold. We'd had this conversation before, during one of our fights about money. The house was mine, bought with my savings before we got married. Celeste had never contributed to the mortgage, never paid for repairs, never even helped with the yard work. "Eddie, please, we can talk about this. Whatever you think happened?" "I don't think anything. I know. White Tesla, glass house on the river. Ring any bells?" Her face went white. Behind her, I could see neighbors starting to gather. Mrs. O'Hara on her porch, the Johnsons from across the street walking their dog but moving real slow, the Martinez family pretending to check their mailbox. "We can work this out," Celeste said, her voice smaller now. "I made a mistake, but we can—" "No, we can't." I closed the window. She pounded on the door for another 10 minutes, then got back in her car and drove away. The neighbors dispersed slowly, like the audience leaving a particularly good show. My phone buzzed. Text message from an unknown number. "This isn't over." I deleted it and poured myself a beer. Outside, Mrs. O'Hara was still on her porch, watering the same flowers she'd been watering an hour ago. It was just getting started. Sunday morning brought 3 more text messages from unknown numbers, each one angrier than the last. Celeste had apparently figured out how to use her boyfriend's phone. "You're being ridiculous. I'm coming back tomorrow to get my things. We need to talk like adults." I forwarded all 3 to my sister Laurel, who practiced family law in Portland. She called me back within an hour. "Eddie, you need to be careful here. Maine is a no-fault divorce state, but she could still cause problems if you're not smart about this." "What kind of problems? Harassment, unlawful eviction, destruction of property. Don't give her any ammunition." "I'm not planning to." "Good. And Eddie? Document everything. Every text, every phone call, every time she shows up at the house. You're going to need it." I spent Sunday afternoon in my workshop, but not working on any paying jobs. I was researching Brandon Lyle, sales director at TechFlow Solutions. It's amazing what you can find online if you know where to look. LinkedIn profile with a smug headshot. Facebook page full of humble brags about his Tesla and his smart home. Instagram account showcasing expensive dinners and weekend trips. Most interesting was his address, Unit 4B at Riverview Lofts, the same building where I'd seen him pick up Celeste. A quick search of the building's website showed that 4B was a 2-bedroom corner unit with floor-to-ceiling windows and a private balcony. Rent was $3,200 a month. I also found his gym membership. TechFlow had a corporate account at FitLife downtown, the same gym where Celeste had been working out 3 evenings a week. The same gym where she'd left her membership card in her purse Friday night, along with her backup phone. Monday morning, I drove to FitLife and walked in like I owned the place. The desk clerk was a college kid with bleached hair and a nose ring, more interested in his phone than in gym security. "Excuse me," I said, pulling out Celeste's membership card. "My wife left this in my truck. Can I drop it off for her?" He barely looked up. "Sure, whatever. Just leave it on the counter." Instead, I walked past him toward the locker rooms, card in hand like a hall pass. FitLife was one of those upscale gyms with eucalyptus towels and protein smoothie bars, the kind of place where people came to see and be seen, not to actually sweat. I found Brandon Lyle on the 3rd floor, running on a treadmill while watching CNBC on a wall-mounted TV. He was wearing expensive workout gear and wireless earbuds, probably listening to a podcast about cryptocurrency or personal optimization. I got on the treadmill next to his and started walking at a leisurely pace. After 5 minutes, I cleared my throat. "Excuse me, aren't you Brandon from TechFlow?" He pulled out one earbud and looked over. Up close, he was exactly what I'd expected. Artificially white teeth, perfect stubble, the kind of tan that comes from weekend trips to places with names like the Hamptons. "Yeah, that's me. Do we know each other?" "Eddie Garrison. I do some work for people in your building." "Oh, cool. Handyman stuff?" "Something like that." I increased my walking speed slightly. "Actually, I think you know my wife, Celeste. She works in HR at your company." His face went through several interesting changes. Confusion, recognition, then something that might have been panic. "Celeste Garrison. Yeah, sure. Nice lady." "She is. We've been married 8 years." I was walking faster now, forcing him to keep up or look weak. "She mentioned you a few times. Said you were helping her with some projects. Just work stuff. You know how it is." "I do now." He was starting to sweat, and not from the treadmill. "Listen, I should probably get back to your workout, sure." I stopped my treadmill and stepped off. "Give Celeste my regards when you see her. Tell her I said the locks work great." I left him there, still running, still sweating, probably wondering how much I knew and what I planned to do about it. The answer was everything and plenty. That afternoon, I paid a visit to Mick at his locksmith shop downtown. The anchor was closed. It didn't open until 4 p.m., but Mick kept his business in the same building, a narrow storefront squeezed between a used bookstore and a place that sold crystals to tourists. "How'd it go with the wife?" he asked, looking up from a lock he was rebuilding. "About like you'd expect. She's pissed, he's scared, and I'm just getting started." "What do you need?" I pulled out my phone and showed him the photos I'd taken of Brandon's Tesla in the gym parking lot. "Think you could get into something like that?" Mick studied the pictures. "Tesla Model S, probably 2018 or 2019. Electronic locks, keyless entry, all that fancy shit." He grinned. "Yeah, I can get into it. Question is, what do you want to do once we're inside?" "Nothing permanent. Nothing that'll cause real damage. Just something to remind him that actions have consequences." I got just the thing. We drove to the gym in Mick's truck, timing it for the evening rush when the parking lot would be crowded. Brandon's Tesla was parked in the same spot as before, gleaming white under the LED lights. Mick had the door open in less than 2 minutes, his electronic tools making quick work of the fancy security system. I slipped inside and got to work while he kept watch. The glitter came from a craft store, fine, iridescent stuff that would stick to everything and never completely come out. I spread it liberally across the seats, the dashboard, the floor mats. Then came the fish sauce, a few drops in the air vents where it would circulate through the climate control system for weeks. "How long?" Mick whispered. "Almost done." I placed a small magnetic sign on the inside of the driver's side door, where Brandon would see it as soon as he got in. It read, "Actions have consequences." We were back in Mick's truck and driving away when Brandon emerged from the gym bag over his shoulder, checking his phone. We watched from the street as he opened his car door, saw the mess, and jumped back like he'd been stung. "Think he'll call the cops?" Mick asked. "And tell them what? That someone broke into his car to leave glitter and a motivational message? He's got bigger problems than that." My phone buzzed. Text from Celeste. "We need to talk. Meet me at the Anchor at 8. I showed Mick the message. He laughed. "She wants to meet at my bar? That's either really stupid or really desperate." Probably both. The Anchor at 8 p.m. on a Monday was about as busy as a morgue. A few regulars nursed beers at the bar while the Red Sox played on the TV, but most of the tables were empty. Celeste was sitting in a corner booth, looking out of place in her business clothes and designer handbag. She'd been crying. Her makeup was smeared and her eyes were red and puffy. For a moment, I almost felt sorry for her. Almost. "Eddie, thank you for coming." I slid into the booth across from her but didn't say anything. Let her make the first move. "This is crazy," she continued. "We're adults. We should be able to work this out without all the drama." "Drama? You mean like fucking your coworker while telling me you're having girls' night?" She flinched. "Keep your voice down." "Why? Afraid people will find out what kind of person you really are?" "I made a mistake, okay? It just happened. Brandon and I worked together, we got close, and things got complicated." "How long?" "What? How long have you been screwing him?" She looked down at her hands. 2 months. 2 months of lying to my face. 2 months of pretending to be my wife while you were playing house with Mr. Tesla. It's not like that. Then what is it like, Celeste? Explain it to me. She took a shaky breath. You and I, we've been drifting apart for years. You know it as well as I do. We don't talk anymore. We don't do anything together. We're like roommates. So you decided to find someone who talks to you better? Brandon understands me. He listens when I talk about work, about my dreams, about the things I want to do with my life. What things? Travel, see the world, experience new things. When's the last time we went anywhere, Eddie? When's the last time we did something spontaneous? Hard to be spontaneous when someone has to pay the mortgage. It's always about money with you. Money pays for the house you've been living in. Money pays for the car you drive, the clothes you wear, the gym membership you use to meet your boyfriend. She was crying again, but I was past caring. I want to come home, Eddie. I want us to try again. There is no us. There's you and there's me and there's the divorce papers Laurel's going to file tomorrow morning. You don't mean that. I've never meant anything more in my life. The front door opened, and Brandon Lyle walked in. He looked around nervously, spotted our booth, and walked over like he was approaching a minefield. Celeste, you okay? I looked up at him. Brandon, how's the car? His face flushed red. You son of a bitch, you broke into my car. Did I? That's a serious accusation. You have any proof? The glitter, the smell, could have been anyone. A lot of people don't like guys who steal other men's wives. He started to say something else, but Mick appeared behind him like a shadow, all 5 feet 6 inches and 200 pounds of him. Problem here? Mick asked. Brandon looked at Mick, then at me, then at Celeste. This is harassment. No, I said, standing up. This is a conversation. Harassment would be following you around, calling you names, maybe telling your boss about your extracurricular activities with married employees. You wouldn't. Try me. Celeste grabbed Brandon's arm. Let's just go. Good idea, Mick said. Bar's got a no-drama policy. Wouldn't want to have to enforce it. They left together, Celeste looking back once with something that might have been regret. I finished my beer and drove home to my empty house. Tuesday morning brought a call from Laurel. Eddie, we have a problem. Celeste hired a lawyer. Good for her. It's Richard Morrison. I knew the name. Morrison was one of those lawyers who advertised on bus benches and late-night TV. One call, that's all. His specialty was making big promises to people with small cases. What's he threatening? Unlawful eviction, harassment, destruction of property. He's also claiming you have marital assets hidden somewhere. Like what? Bank accounts, tools, business equipment. He wants a full financial disclosure. He can have it. I've got nothing to hide. Good. But Eddie, you need to be more careful. No more pranks, no more confrontations. Morrison's the kind of lawyer who'll try to make you look like the bad guy. I promised to behave myself, but I had my fingers crossed. Wednesday afternoon, I was working on the Morrison kitchen renovation when my phone rang. Unknown number. Eddie Garrison? Speaking. This is Richard Morrison, attorney for Celeste Garrison. I think we need to talk. Talk to my lawyer. I'd prefer to handle this between us, man to man. I doubt that. Mr. Garrison, my client is willing to be reasonable. She's not asking for alimony, she's not trying to take your business. She just wants her fair share of the marital assets and a chance to get back on her feet. She can get on her feet at her boyfriend's place. That relationship is over. Mr. Lyle has made it clear that he's not interested in a serious commitment. That was interesting. So she's looking for a soft place to land. She's looking for a fair settlement. Here's my settlement offer. She can have whatever's in the storage unit and I'll pay for the divorce. That's it. Mr. Garrison? I hung up. Thursday brought more drama. I was at the hardware store picking up supplies when Tiffany Walsh cornered me near the paint section. Eddie, you need to stop this. Stop what? Whatever you're doing to Celeste and Brandon, she's a mess and he's talking about filing a police report. For what? Harassment, vandalism, stalking. I haven't stalked anyone. Following them to the gym, breaking into his car. I go to that gym, it's a public place, and I never broke into anyone's car. Tiffany stepped closer, lowering her voice. Look, I know Celeste screwed up, but she's my friend, and she's hurting. Can't you just let this go? She made her choice. Now she gets to live with it. You're being cruel. I'm being honest. There's a difference. That evening, I was having dinner at the Anchor when Jules Martinez walked in. Jules worked at TechFlow with Celeste and Brandon, some kind of marketing coordinator. She was young, maybe 25, with purple hair and enough tattoos to qualify as a walking art gallery. She sat down at my table without being invited. You're Eddie. Guilty. I work with your wife, ex-wife, whatever. Okay. She's been telling people you're stalking her. People believe what they want to believe. Jules smiled. I don't believe her. Why not? Because I know what really happened. I know about the affair, I know about the lies, and I know she's trying to play the victim now that it's blown up in her face. I waited for her to continue. Brandon's an asshole, she said. He's been hitting on every woman in the office since he started there 6 months ago. Celeste was just the first one stupid enough to fall for it. Why are you telling me this? Because I'm tired of watching her play innocent, and because I think you deserve to know the truth. She pulled out her phone and showed me a screenshot of a text conversation. Brandon sent this to his buddy Gavin last week. The messages were brutal. Brandon bragging about his conquest, calling Celeste desperate and clingy, making jokes about married women being easy targets. The last message made my stomach turn. She thinks I'm going to leave my girlfriend for her. These older chicks are so fucking naive. He has a girlfriend? Lives in Boston. They've been together for 2 years. I stared at the phone screen. feeling something cold settle in my chest. Celeste wasn't just a cheater, she was a fool. "Can you send me these?" Jules forwarded the screenshots to my phone. "There's more where that came from. Brandon's not as smart as he thinks he is." "Why are you doing this?" "Because I hate seeing women get played, even women who should know better." She stood up to leave, then turned back. "Your wife's boss, Ms. Lynn. She doesn't know about the affair yet, but she's starting to ask questions about why Celeste's been so distracted lately." "Interesting. Might be worth having a conversation with her. You know, if someone happened to find Celeste's backup phone and felt obligated to return it to the office." She walked away, leaving me with my beer and a phone full of evidence. Friday morning, I drove to TechFlow Solutions with Celeste's backup phone in my jacket pocket. The converted textile building was an impressive piece of architecture, all exposed brick and industrial windows, but it couldn't hide the fact that it used to house machinery that put half the town out of work. The lobby was modern and sterile, with a reception desk staffed by someone who looked barely old enough to vote. I walked up with my best contractor smile. "Morning. I found this phone in the parking lot." I held up Celeste's device. Figured someone might be missing it. "Oh, wow. Thanks. Let me see if I can figure out whose it is." The phone was locked, but the emergency contact screen showed Work, TechFlow, and a number I recognized as the main office line. "Looks like it belongs to someone here," the receptionist said. "I'll get it to the right person." "Actually, I think it might belong to Celeste Garrison in HR. I do some work for her husband." "Oh, perfect. I'll take it right up to her." "She might not be in yet. Maybe her boss could hold on to it?" "Sure, that works. Ms. Lynn's always here early." I left the phone with the receptionist and drove to a coffee shop across the street to wait. Through the window, I could see the TechFlow lobby and the elevators beyond. At 9:30 a.m., I watched the receptionist get on an elevator with a small package, Celeste's phone, presumably on its way to Ms. Lynn's office. At 10:15, Celeste's Honda pulled into the parking lot. She got out looking tired and stressed, wearing yesterday's clothes and carrying the same overnight bag she'd packed for her fake girls' weekend. Apparently, Brandon's hospitality had its limits. My own phone buzzed with a text from Jules. "Fireworks starting on the 3rd floor. Lynn called an emergency meeting." I finished my coffee and drove home to wait for the fallout. It didn't take long. At 11:30, Celeste called from her regular phone. "Eddie, you bastard, what did you do?" "Good morning to you, too." "My boss has my phone. The one with—" She stopped herself. "The one with what?" "You know what." "Actually, I don't. I found a phone in a parking lot and returned it to its owner. Seemed like the right thing to do." "You're lying." "Prove it." She hung up. 10 minutes later, my phone rang again. This time, it was Richard Morrison, her lawyer. "Mr. Garrison, this has gone too far." "What has?" "The harassment, the stalking, the interference with my client's employment." "I haven't interfered with anything. If your client is having employment problems, maybe she should examine her own behavior." "You deliberately sabotaged her by giving personal information to her employer." "I returned a lost phone to its rightful owner. If there was personal information on that phone, that's not my problem. We're filing a restraining order." "Good luck with that." I hung up and called Laurel. "Eddie, what did you do now?" I explained about the phone and the text messages Jules had shown me. "Jesus, Eddie, you're walking a tightrope here." "I returned lost property. That's not illegal." "It's not illegal, but it's not smart either. If they can prove you deliberately tried to damage her career, they can't prove anything. I found a phone and returned it. End of story." "What about these text messages from the boyfriend? What about them?" "I didn't hack his phone or steal his messages. Someone showed them to me voluntarily." Laurel sighed. "Just be careful, okay? Morrison's a sleazeball, but he's not stupid. He's looking for any excuse to paint you as the villain." That afternoon, I was replacing a kitchen faucet for Mrs. Chen on Elm Street when Jules called. Holy shit, Eddie. Your wife is in full meltdown mode. What happened? Lynn called her into the office this morning, asked her about the phone and the messages. Celeste tried to deny everything, but the evidence was right there in black and white. And? Lynn suspended her pending an investigation. TechFlow has a strict policy about relationships between employees and vendors. Brandon's technically a vendor since he works for an outside sales company. Interesting. It gets better. Celeste went straight to Brandon's office to confront him, and they had a screaming match in the hallway. He told her the whole thing was a mistake and he never promised her anything. How'd she take that? About like you'd expect. She called him a lying piece of shit and threw her coffee at him. Security had to escort her out of the building. I almost felt sorry for Celeste. Almost. Where is she now? No idea, but Brandon's been calling in sick since Wednesday. Word is he's thinking about transferring to the Boston office. Running away? Looks like it. That evening, I was having dinner at the Anchor when Mick slid into the booth across from me. Heard your wife made quite a scene at the fancy building today. News travels fast. Faster when it involves someone throwing coffee at a guy in a $3,000 suit. Mick grinned. Also heard he's been driving around in a rental car since Monday. Tesla still smells like fish? Worse. Apparently the glitter got into the ventilation system. Every time he turns on the air conditioning, it's like a craft store exploded. We sat in comfortable silence for a while, watching the Red Sox lose to the Yankees. What's next? Mick asked. Nothing. It's over. You sure about that? Before I could answer, the front door opened and Celeste walked in. She looked terrible. Hair unwashed, clothes wrinkled, makeup smeared. She scanned the room until she spotted me, then walked over like she was approaching a firing squad. Eddie? Celeste. Can we talk, please? Mick started to get up, but I waved him back down. Whatever you have to say, you can say it here. She looked around the bar, taking in the curious stares from the regulars. Fine. I'm sorry. I'm sorry for everything. The affair, the lies, the way I treated you. I fucked up, and I know it. Okay. I lost my job today. Brandon won't return my calls. I've got nowhere to go and no money to get there. Not my problem. Eddie, please. I know you hate me right now, but we were married for 8 years. That has to count for something. It did count for something, right up until you decided to throw it away for a guy with a fancy car and a glass house. Tears started flowing down her cheeks. I made a mistake, a terrible mistake, but I'm begging you, don't leave me with nothing. I looked at her for a long moment, this woman I'd loved and married and shared a life with. She was broken now, destroyed by her own choices and the consequences that followed. Part of me wanted to help her, to be the better person, to show mercy. But a bigger part of me remembered the lies, the deception, the way she'd looked at Brandon like he was everything I wasn't. You've got your car, I said finally. You've got whatever's in the storage unit, and you've got the knowledge that you did this to yourself. Eddie, we're done, Celeste. We've been done since the moment you sent that text message telling me not to call you. The only difference is now everyone knows it. She stood there for another moment, swaying slightly like she might collapse. Then she turned and walked out of the bar, leaving behind 8 years of marriage and whatever dignity she had left. Mick raised his beer. To new beginnings. I clinked my bottle against his. To new beginnings. Outside, I could hear Celeste's Honda starting up, the engine rough and uncertain. She drove away slowly, like she wasn't sure where she was going. I didn't watch her leave. I'd already seen enough. Epilogue. No return address. 6 months later, I was installing new cabinets in the Morrison kitchen when my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Heard Celeste moved to Florida, working at a call center in Tampa. It was from Jules, who'd kept in touch sporadically since the TechFlow incident. She'd been promoted to Celeste's old position after Lynn decided the company needed someone more stable in HR. I didn't respond to the text. I'd moved on from caring about Celeste's whereabouts or circumstances. Brandon had indeed transferred to Boston, though, according to Jules, his girlfriend had dumped him when she found out about the affair. Apparently, she'd seen the glitter in his car and put two and two together. He was living alone in a studio apartment in Somerville, selling software to companies that probably didn't need it. The divorce had been finalized in March. Celeste got the contents of the storage unit and half of our joint savings account, about $3,000. I kept the house, the business, and my self-respect. Mrs. O'Hara still watched everything that happened on Maple Street, but these days she mostly just waved when I came home from work. The neighborhood drama had moved on to the Hendersons 2 blocks over, who were having loud fights about money every weekend. I'd started dating again, nothing serious, just coffee with a librarian named Sarah who liked mystery novels and didn't own a smartphone. She thought my story about the glitter and fish sauce was hilarious. "You're terrible," she'd said, laughing over her latte. "Remind me never to cheat on you." "I'll remind you every day." The business was doing well. Word had gotten around about my problem-solving abilities, and I had more work than I could handle. Apparently there were a lot of people in Millbrook who needed things fixed, and not all of them were talking about leaky faucets. I was finishing up the Morrison job when Mrs. Morrison herself came into the kitchen. "Eddie, this looks wonderful. You do such beautiful work." "Thank you, Mrs. Morrison. I hope you don't mind me saying, but you seem much happier these days, more relaxed." "I am. Good for you. Life's too short to spend it with the wrong person." I packed up my tools and loaded them into my truck. The sun was setting over Millbrook, painting the old textile building and the river beyond in shades of gold and red. It was a beautiful evening, the kind that made you grateful to be alive and free to enjoy it. My phone buzzed with another text, this one from Mick. "Anchor, beer, now." I drove downtown and found him at our usual table, 2 Budweisers already waiting. "How'd the Morrison job go?" "Good. They're happy, I'm paid, everybody wins." "Speaking of winning, guess who I saw at the grocery store today?" "Who?" "Tiffany Walsh. She asked about you." "What did she say?" "Wanted to know if you ever heard from Celeste. I told her you'd moved on to bigger and better things." "What did she say to that?" "She said good for you." Apparently, the whole girls' night story fell apart when people started asking questions. Turns out Tiffany was never part of any weekend plans. I wasn't surprised. Tiffany might have been shallow and gossipy, but she wasn't stupid. She'd figured out what was happening and wanted no part of it. We drank our beers and watched the Red Sox on the bar's TV. They were playing the Yankees again, and for once, they were winning. "You know what I learned from all this?" I said. "What's that?" "Sometimes the best revenge is just letting people destroy themselves." Deep thoughts from Eddie Garrison. I have my moments. We finished our beers, and I drove home to my empty house on Maple Street. Empty, but not lonely. There's a difference. I sat on my front porch and watched the sun finish setting over Millbrook. Mrs. O'Hara was watering her flowers again, and she waved when she saw me. "Beautiful evening, Eddie." "Yes, it is, Mrs. O'Hara. Yes, it is." My phone was quiet. No angry texts, no threatening calls from lawyers, no drama from people who'd made bad choices and wanted someone else to fix them. I went inside and made myself dinner, something simple but good. I ate at my kitchen table, looking out at the backyard I'd been meaning to landscape for 3 years. Maybe I'd start this weekend. Maybe I'd plant some flowers like Mrs. O'Hara's. After dinner, I sat in my living room and picked up a book. Not Stephen King this time, but something lighter. A mystery novel Sarah had recommended about a detective who solved crimes by paying attention to details other people missed. It seemed appropriate. Outside Maple Street was quiet except for the occasional car passing by. Normal people living normal lives, dealing with normal problems that could be solved with honest work and decent behavior. I was one of them now, not the victim of someone else's betrayal, not the angry husband seeking revenge, just Eddie Garrison, small business owner, fixing things for people who needed them fixed. It was enough, more than enough. I read until midnight, then turned off the lights and went upstairs to my bedroom. The bed was still too big for one person, but I was getting used to having room to spread out. Before I fell asleep, I thought about Celeste in her call center in Tampa, probably wondering how her life had gone so wrong so fast. I thought about Brandon in his studio apartment, learning that actions really do have consequences. I thought about the lies they'd told themselves and each other, and how those lies had finally caught up with them. Then I stopped thinking about them at all. Some stories end with forgiveness. Some end with redemption. Some end with people learning from their mistakes and becoming better human beings. This wasn't one of those stories. This was a story about choices and consequences, about what happens when you betray the people who love you and trust that there won't be a price to pay. Celeste had made her choice. Brandon had made his. And I had made mine. The difference was, I could live with mine. I fell asleep in my own bed, in my own house, on my own terms. No return address needed.